I have engaged extensively in public discourse around this situation, including revealing to Nigerians that the trial was orchestrated in advance. Everything that ultimately unfolded on the day of the conviction had already been disclosed by me on November 5. We may consider ourselves fortunate that our efforts through the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest helped spare him from a death sentence, because that was indeed the original plan. Anyone can verify this by checking my Twitter and Facebook posts from November 5, where I shared that information ahead of time. As a consequence of our activism, the authorities grew furious that we organized a protest in Abuja. They opened fire on us, deployed tear gas, and arrested his lawyers and eventually myself. We were taken to court near Cuge on the outskirts of Abuja and imprisoned for 4 days. Even after bail was granted on a Friday, the judge responsible for signing the release papers disappeared and did not return until Monday. The groundwork for Nnamdi Kanu's conviction was being laid at every turn. However, when the authorities sensed that a death sentence might prove deeply unpopular, they pulled back and settled on life imprisonment instead. Even that has failed to silence him or suppress the movement he represents. As I have consistently maintained, he prophetically foresaw many of the realities Nigeria now faces. By the time of his conviction, those predictions had come full circle, particularly regarding the unchecked reign of those labeled terrorists or bandits, who have paradoxically enjoyed preferential treatment from the Nigerian state. These individuals move freely in convoys using vehicles seized from the Nigerian army. One of them wore the uniform of a police commissioner he had murdered and paraded through town. They carry heavy weaponry openly and hold press conferences. I must state clearly that the only tangible evidence presented against Nnamdi Kanu throughout his entire trial was a microphone, a radio transmitter, and clothing found in a hotel room. Every other accusation was purely circumstantial. They claimed he incited people against the police while he was not even in the country. They accused him of building the Eastern Security Network into what it became. Yet there are prominent Nigerians who proudly take credit for founding that same organization. I personally helped grow it in Abuja by mobilizing individuals and enlisting notable figures. If those people are celebrated for their involvement, why is he serving a life sentence merely for things he allegedly said? There was no concrete evidence that anything he was accused of directly caused harm. They even blamed him for the killing of Ahmed Gulak while he was in DSS custody. Having experienced DSS detention myself, I know firsthand that access to communication is virtually non-existent. The idea that someone in that situation could coordinate an assassination is not credible. The contrast is glaring. A man like Nnamdi Kanu faces life imprisonment while a known terrorist commander from a local armed group received only 20 years. This is the condition Nigeria finds itself in today. As in Orwell's Animal Farm, some are treated as more equal than others. Without justice that applies uniformly to every citizen, peace will remain out of reach. Many of us have said this repeatedly, whether people want to hear it or not. What is deeply ironic is that those who used Kanu as a scapegoat, dismissing concerns by pointing to him as the problem, are now confronted with genuinely dangerous actors. The difference is that those actors enjoy protection and immunity. The situation we find ourselves in today did not emerge overnight. It is the product of years of selective justice, deliberate neglect, and a political culture that has consistently rewarded the powerful while punishing those who dare to speak truth. Nnamdi Kanu was not imprisoned because he was a criminal. He was imprisoned because he was effective. He was loud, he was reaching millions of people, and he was naming names at a time when those names preferred to operate in the shadows. Let us be honest about what his radio broadcasts represented. They represented an alternative source of information at a time when mainstream Nigerian media was either compromised, intimidated, or simply unwilling to ask the hard questions. People tuned in from across the southeast, across the country, and across the diaspora not because he was preaching violence, but because he was saying things that resonated with their lived experiences. The frustration, the marginalization, the sense that the Nigerian state viewed certain communities as expendable. These were not sentiments he manufactured, he merely gave voice to what already existed. Now, whether one agrees with every word he ever said or every position he ever took is an entirely separate conversation. I have never claimed he was perfect, and I do not intend to begin doing so now. What I am saying, and what I will continue to say regardless of the political consequences, is that the process used to convict him was fundamentally compromised. A trial where the conclusion is written before the proceedings begin is not a trial, it is theater. It is a performance designed to give the appearance of legality while achieving a predetermined political outcome. And the Nigerian people are not foolish. They watched, they took note, they saw how his lawyers were harassed, arrested, and intimidated. They saw how protests were met with live ammunition. They saw how bail conditions were manipulated and how a judge conveniently disappeared rather than sign release papers. These are not the actions of a state confident in the strength of its case. These are the actions of a state that knows it is on shaky ground and is relying on brute force to compensate for the absence of legitimate evidence. What troubles me most, however, is not what was done to Nnamdi Kanu specifically. What troubles me is what his case reveals about the broader state of the Nigerian justice system and by extension the Nigerian state itself. If a man can be abducted from a foreign country, rendered back to Nigeria in violation of international law, held in solitary confinement, denied adequate access to his legal team, tried under circumstances his own lawyers repeatedly described as unfair, and then sentenced to life imprisonment on the basis of a microphone and some clothing, then no Nigerian is truly safe. If that can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. The only variable is whether you are considered a threat to those in power. Meanwhile, the individuals who have actually taken lives, who have burned villages, who have kidnapped schoolchildren, who have ambushed military convoys and paraded in stolen uniforms, those individuals continue to move freely. Some of them are being negotiated with. Some of them are receiving government stipends as part of so-called rehabilitation programs. Some of them are sitting across tables from governors and ministers, being treated as stakeholders in a peace process. Yet Nnamdi Kanu, who to this day has not been linked by credible evidence to a single act of physical violence, rots in detention. I want people to sit with that contradiction for a moment, because it is not incidental. It is not a coincidence or an administrative oversight. It is a reflection of who the Nigerian state considers a genuine threat and who it considers manageable. A man with a microphone who is mobilizing ethnic and regional consciousness is apparently